The metallic hum of flight departure announcements filled Terminal 3. I stood, rooted to the spot, gazing at the now vacant space where Harrison had stood moments before. My wedding dress remained nestled in its garment bag, awaiting its second appearance for the sunset photographs we'd envisioned on the Mauritian beaches. "Just need to answer this, love. Won't be long," he'd murmured, giving my hand a squeeze before stepping away. That was 45 minutes prior. Our flight was due to board in 15 minutes, and my calls were met by his voicemail. The morning had been a blur of elation. I'd struggled to comprehend that after yesterday's flawless wedding, we were commencing our 3-week honeymoon. The weight of the platinum band, newly placed on my finger, felt both unfamiliar and thrilling. Harrison had been uncharacteristically reserved during the drive to the airport, but I dismissed it as fatigue from the wedding celebrations. Now, isolated amidst the throng of travelers, a chilling apprehension began to consume me. A text message illuminated my phone. My hands shook as I read, "I'm sorry, I can't do this. Don't try to find me." The floor felt as though it was shifting beneath me. A nearby couple glanced at me with concern as I clutched the handle of my carry-on for stability. The same luggage Harrison and I had selected together, a matching set in a rich burgundy, because, as he'd put it, it would be easy to spot. Final boarding call for Flight BA 269 to Mauritius. The announcement sliced through my thoughts. Our flight, the one we'd meticulously planned, the supposed idyllic beginning to our idyllic life. I'm not sure what motivated me. Perhaps shock, perhaps defiance, or perhaps simply the utter refusal to accept this as my new reality. But I straightened my back and proceeded to the gate. The tickets were paid, the resort booked, and somehow the prospect of returning to our empty apartment, of facing our loved ones with the news that my marriage had dissolved in under 24 hours, was more daunting than boarding that plane alone. The flight attendant's expression morphed from practiced cheerfulness to worry as she observed my tear-streaked face and the unoccupied seat beside me. "Everything all right, ma'am?" she inquired. I managed a feeble nod, incapable of articulating the truth, that I was embarking on my honeymoon solo, that my husband of precisely one day had vanished, that my entire world had disintegrated within an hour. As the plane ascended, I gazed out the window, watching London diminish below. My mind replayed every moment of the past year. Harrison and I had met at a charity gala. He'd been charming, accomplished, seemingly flawless. Our whirlwind courtship had felt like a dream, and everyone had declared us a perfect match. The warning signs I now recognized had been present. The calls he took in private, the enigmatic work meetings, the occasional periods of distance followed by renewed displays of affection. But nothing could have prepared me for this. As the plane traversed the English Channel, my phone briefly regained signal, and another message arrived. This one chilled me to the bone. "Check your joint account." Trembling, I accessed our banking app via the in-flight Wi-Fi. The account we'd established together 3 months prior, where we'd been accumulating savings for our future home, displayed a balance of 0. Every penny, including my inheritance from my grandmother, had been withdrawn. The realization struck me with physical force. I wasn't simply abandoned. I was alone, betrayed, and financially ruined. At 35,000 feet, en route to a luxury resort in Mauritius that now felt like a cruel irony, I requested a gin and tonic, my first alcoholic beverage since the wedding toast. As I sipped it, attempting to compose myself, I made a decision. This narrative wouldn't end here, at this point of utter devastation. I didn't yet know how, but I would uncover the truth about Harrison, about his motives, about his true identity. The gentleman across the aisle cast a sympathetic glance my way as I wiped away another tear. Little did he know, this was merely the prelude to a story far more intricate and devastating than even I could then fathom. Stepping into the humid Mauritian air felt dreamlike. The paradise I'd envisioned for months now seemed to taunt me with its beauty. Palm trees rustled in the breeze, and blissful couples ambled hand in hand through the airport. I clutched my phone, fixated on the screen displaying a series of increasingly unsettling emails. The first had arrived during my flight, a message from my closest friend, Amber. Sienna, call me immediately. Something's wrong. Harrison's sister, Annabelle, just called me in tears. I'd met Annabelle only thrice during my year-long relationship with Harrison. She resided in Manchester and always seemed strangely guarded around me, though Harrison had attributed it to her personality. Now, I wondered if she'd harbored suspicions all along. The hotel driver held a sign bearing the inscription, Mr. and Mrs. Walker. And I nearly succumbed to tears again. That name, my newly acquired married name, now felt alien. I approached him nonetheless, explaining that it would only be me. His practiced smile remained, but I detected the pity in his gaze. Your husband will be joining you later? He inquired politely as we drove along the coastal road. No, I replied, my voice barely audible. No, he won't. In my luxurious ocean view suite, I finally mustered the courage to call Amber. Her voice was strained with worry when she answered. Sienna, I don't know how to tell you this, but Annabelle says Harrison's been married before. My legs buckled, and I collapsed onto the king-sized bed that should have been our honeymoon haven. What do you mean, before? He told me he'd never even been engaged. 3 years ago, Amber continued, her voice trembling, to a woman named Beatrice in Manchester. Annabelle says, she says he did the same thing to her. He disappeared right after the wedding. Beatrice's family lost everything. The room swirled around me. I recalled Harrison's meticulously crafted narrative about growing up in London, about his thriving consulting business, about his aspirations for a family. How much of it had been genuine? With trembling fingers, I opened my laptop and began searching. It took hours, but gradually, horrifyingly, the truth materialized. Harrison Walker wasn't even his real name. I unearthed a newspaper article from Manchester, dated 3 years prior. Local businessman vanishes after wedding, leaving trail of debt. The photograph depicted a woman named Beatrice Patterson outside a courthouse, her face etched with the same shock and devastation I now experienced. But that wasn't all. As I delved deeper, I discovered more. 2 years before Beatrice, there had been another woman in Edinburgh. The same pattern. Whirlwind romance, extravagant wedding, disappearance. Different name, same man. My Harrison, or whatever his true name was. My phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. My heart seized when I opened it. I know what Harrison did to you. I'm Beatrice. We need to talk. I stared at the message, the sound of crashing waves outside my window, providing an eerily tranquil backdrop to my inner turmoil. The man I'd married, the man I'd believed I knew intimately, was a stranger, a con artist who had honed his craft through multiple performances. But something didn't align. The timing of his disappearance, the way he'd ensured we checked our luggage before he vanished. It felt distinct from the other cases I was reading about. And why Mauritius? Why orchestrate such an elaborate honeymoon if he intended to disappear? I was about to reply to Beatrice's message when my phone lit up with another call, this time from Harrison's number. My heart pounded as I answered, but instead of his voice, I heard rapid breathing and what sounded like someone running. Sienna! He gasped, his voice tight with what sounded like genuine fear. Don't trust anything you're about to hear about me. I can explain everything, but I need you to do exactly what I say. Are you alone? Before I could respond, I heard a commotion in the background, followed by the sound of shattering glass. The call abruptly disconnected. I sat in my honeymoon suite, the setting sun casting elongated shadows across the room, holding my phone and attempting to decipher what was transpiring. Was this another manipulation? A new twist in his elaborate scheme? Or was there something more significant unfolding? Something I couldn't yet grasp? The next message I received wasn't from Harrison or Beatrice, but from Annabelle. Whatever you do, don't tell anyone where you are. Your life might depend on it. I spent that initial night in Mauritius oscillating between tears and frantic research. Beatrice had agreed to a video call, and as I awaited the designated time, I paced the beautiful beachfront suite that now felt more like a luxurious prison. The sounds of joyful holidaymakers drifted up from the pool below, their merriment a stark contrast to the chaos within me. When Beatrice's face appeared on my screen, I felt a jolt of recognition, not because we resembled each other, but because I perceived in her eyes the same haunted expression I'd witnessed in my own reflection that morning. "I'm so sorry this happened to you," she began, her Manchester accent gentle and sympathetic. "I know exactly what you're feeling right now." But as she recounted her story, I realized something was amiss. The Harrison she described, a brash, materialistic man who swept her off her feet with extravagant gifts and grand gestures, seemed like a completely different person from the quiet, thoughtful man I'd fallen in love with. "He was always flaunting his wealth," Beatrice continued, "taking me to the finest restaurants, buying me jewelry. Is that how he was with you?" I shook my head slowly. "No. Harrison, my Harrison. He was different. We usually cooked at home. He preferred intimate dinners to lavish ones. The only expensive gift he ever gave me was my engagement ring." Beatrice's expression shifted, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. "That's strange. Did he ever mention someone named Blake?" The name struck me with physical force. Blake had been Harrison's closest friend, the best man at our wedding. He delivered a heartfelt speech about their 15-year friendship, about how Harrison had supported him through his divorce 3 years prior. But when I mentioned this to Beatrice, she leaned forward, her face pale. "Sienna, I need you to listen carefully," she said. "The man in this photo, is this your Harrison?" She held up her phone to the camera, displaying her wedding photo. My hands began to tremble. The man standing beside Beatrice in her wedding photo was Blake. "That's not," I began, then stopped, my mind racing. I swiftly retrieved my own wedding photos on my laptop, turning the screen to show Beatrice. "This is my Harrison." Beatrice's sharp intake of breath indicated something was profoundly wrong. "Sienna, that man. That's Logan. He was Blake's business partner. He disappeared at the same time Blake did, along with all our money." The room seemed to tilt. I reflected on all the times Harrison had taken calls from Blake in private, about the mysterious business meetings, about how he'd insisted on handling all our wedding preparations himself. "There's more," Beatrice said, her voice trembling. "After everything happened, I did some digging. Blake and Logan, they weren't just con men. They were involved in something bigger, something dangerous. And Sienna, I think they might have finally crossed the wrong people." Just then, my phone vibrated with a text from Annabelle. "Don't believe everything Beatrice tells you. Some of it is true, but not all. Harrison loved you. That part was real. He's in trouble, Sienna, real trouble, and you might be too." I looked back at Beatrice on my screen, scrutinizing her face. Was she conveying the complete truth? And if Harrison, or Logan, or whoever he truly was, had genuinely loved me, why disappear now? Why abscond with my money? "Beatrice," I said slowly, "the day before the wedding, Harrison asked me to transfer all our savings to a new account. He said it was for house hunting when we returned. I didn't think anything of it at the time." Beatrice's expression darkened. "Did he tell you which bank?" "Swiss United," I replied. "Why?" "Because that's not a real bank, Sienna. But that name, I've heard it before. It's connected to someone very dangerous, someone Blake and Logan were terrified of." Before she could elaborate, my room phone rang, startling me. It was the front desk. "Mrs. Walker, there's a gentleman here requesting to see you. He claims to be your brother-in-law." My heart began to race. I don't have a brother-in-law. There was a pause on the line. "He's quite insistent, madam. He says it's regarding your husband's safety." I glanced back at Beatrice on my laptop screen. She had paled. "Sienna," she whispered, "get out of there." I grabbed my passport and phone, stuffing them into my purse. What about my luggage? Leave it, Beatrice urged. There's a back entrance through the service area. I stayed at that resort once. Get to the beach. There are always people there. I'm calling someone I know in Mauritius right now. He'll help you. As I slipped out of my room, I heard the elevator ding at the end of the hall. Male voices emerged, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. I turned and fled in the opposite direction, toward the service entrance, my heart pounding. My phone vibrated again, another message from Harrison. Whatever you do, don't let them find you. I'm sorry for everything, but this isn't what you think. Trust no one until I can reach you again. As I pushed through the service door and into the humid evening air, I realized I was now fleeing from something, but I had no idea what. All I knew was that my honeymoon had morphed into something far more terrifying than a mere tale of betrayal. The sound of footsteps behind me propelled me into a sprint toward the crowded beach, my wedding ring glinting in the last rays of the setting sun. I had a premonition I was about to discover precisely why Harrison had chosen to vanish, and why he might have been attempting to safeguard me by doing so. The beach teemed with tourists savoring the sunset, oblivious to my racing heart and trembling hands. I forced myself to walk casually, resisting the urge to run, as I heard voices behind me speaking in hushed tones. My white sundress, which I'd donned after arriving at the resort, now felt conspicuously noticeable against the darkening sky. My phone vibrated, a message from Beatrice with a location pin. Go to Le Petit Café in Grand Bay. Ask for Antoine. He's expecting you. I hailed a taxi, constantly glancing over my shoulder. The driver, an elderly man with kind eyes, must have sensed my distress. Everything okay, madam? Yes, I lied, then made a split-second decision. Actually, no. I believe I'm being followed. Could you... He nodded before I could finish, pulling away from the resort with surprising alacrity. In the side mirror, I observed two men in dark suits emerge onto the street, looking around frantically. As we drove along the coastal road, my phone lit up with a series of messages that chilled me to the core. They were from Annabelle. Sienna, I need to tell you the truth about Harrison, about everything. He's my brother, but Logan isn't his real name either. We're both in witness protection. Or we were until 3 days ago. My hand shook as I read the subsequent message. The business with Blake. It wasn't what you think. Harrison was working undercover. He's been helping build a case against a major international crime syndicate. Blake was his way in, but something went wrong. The taxi navigated narrow streets lined with vibrant buildings, finally halting outside a small cafe with peeling blue paint. The driver refused to accept my payment. Stay safe, madam, he said softly. Inside Le Petit Café, a man I assumed was Antoine escorted me to a back room that appeared untouched since the 1970s. The ancient ceiling fan squeaked as it rotated, and the air smelled of stale coffee and secrets. Beatrice called me, he said in heavily accented English. She told me about Harrison, or should I say, Agent Logan Morrison. The name struck me with physical force. Agent asterisk. My mind raced back through every moment of our relationship, searching for clues I might have overlooked. 3 years ago, Antoine continued, your husband helped us track down one of the biggest financial criminals in Europe. Blake was his partner in the operation. They got close to the target, but something went wrong. The target discovered they were undercover agents. Blake disappeared. We believed he was dead. I sank into a worn leather chair, my legs no longer capable of supporting me. But the wedding, taking my money, running away. Antoine's face softened. The money isn't gone, Sienna. It's being held in a secure account. Harrison transferred it to protect it. And you. 2 days before your wedding, we received intelligence that Blake had resurfaced. He's working for them now, and he knows everything about you and Harrison. My phone vibrated again. Another message from Harrison. Sienna, if you're reading this, you're hopefully with Antoine by now. I'm sorry for leaving you like that, but they were watching the airport. They would have apprehended both of us if I hadn't created a diversion. Everything I told you about my feelings for you was genuine, but almost everything else was a lie to protect you. Tears blurred my vision as I read his subsequent message. The men pursuing you aren't police or agents. They work for someone far more dangerous, someone who's been utilizing banks and businesses across Europe to fund terrorist operations. We were close to exposing everything when Blake betrayed us. Antoine placed a burner phone on the table between us. Harrison will contact you on this, but first you need to make a choice, Sienna. We can return you to London tonight, place you in protective custody. Or what? Or you can assist us in finishing what Harrison initiated, help us dismantle the entire operation. But I caution you, if you choose to remain, your life will never be the same. I stared at the burner phone, contemplating the man I'd fallen in love with, the man who had deceived me about everything except his affections, the man who was now jeopardizing his life to safeguard me and thwart something far grander and more perilous than I could have imagined. The ceiling fan continued its monotonous squeak as I reached for the phone. Before I could touch it, the cafe's front doorbell jingled. Antoine's demeanor transformed from calm to alarm in an instant. "They've located us," he whispered, reaching for something beneath his jacket. "Quick, through the kitchen!" But as I stood up, I heard a familiar voice that made my heart cease, a voice I'd believed I'd never hear again. "Hello, Sienna," Blake said, stepping into the back room. "I believe it's time we had a discussion about your husband." Blake appeared different from how I recalled him at the wedding. Gone was the charming smile and relaxed demeanor. His eyes were hardened, calculating, as he pulled up a chair and sat down, obstructing the sole exit. Antoine remained tense beside me, his hands still concealed beneath his jacket. "You can relax, Antoine," Blake said smoothly. "I arrived alone, and I'm merely here to converse." "Like you conversed with Beatrice?" I interjected, surprised by the steel in my own voice. A flicker of something, regret, shame, crossed Blake's face. "Beatrice was collateral damage. I never intended for things to escalate that far. But your husband, the man you know as Harrison, he's the one who endangered her, endangered all of you, by attempting to apprehend criminals. The—" Words escaped before I could restrain them. Blake leaned forward, his expression intense. "Is that what they informed you? That we're the antagonists? That Harrison's some sort of hero?" He retrieved his phone, sliding it across the table to me. "Examine these photographs." The images depicted Harrison or Logan, or whoever he truly was, at various locations over the past few years. In some, he was with individuals I didn't recognize. In others, he was clearly conducting surveillance. But the final photograph chilled me to the core. Harrison holding hands with an attractive woman, gazing at her in the same manner he used to gaze at me. "That was 6 months ago," Blake said quietly. "While he was engaged to you. Her name is Elena. She's the daughter of Viktor Petrov, the man Harrison alleges he's attempting to bring down. But observe the date stamp, Sienna. Observe how he's looking at her." My hands trembled as I scrutinized the photograph. 6 months ago, Harrison and I had been planning our wedding. He'd informed me he was away on business trips. Had those trips been with her? "You're attempting to manipulate me," I said, but my voice faltered. "Am I?" Blake's voice was gentle now. "Or am I revealing the truth about the man you married? Harrison isn't who you believe him to be. He's not even who his own agency believes him to be. He's been deceiving everyone. The agency, Petrov, you, me. There's a reason he absconded with your money, Sienna, and it wasn't to safeguard you." Antoine shifted beside me. "Don't listen to him. This is his tactic, twisting the truth until you're uncertain what to believe." "Really?" Blake raised an eyebrow. "Then elucidate this." He produced another phone, Harrison's phone, the one he'd been utilizing at the airport. "I discovered this after he fled. Examine his messages with Elena." It shouldn't have looked. Every instinct advised me against it, but I had to know. The messages spanned months. They were intimate, loving, plans for a future together, plans that had nothing to do with any investigation. He's been collaborating with Petrov all along, Blake continued. The agency investigation was his cover. He required a legitimate wife to render his narrative credible. Someone with an impeccable background, someone trusting. You were ideal. But Elena, she was his true objective. Through her, he could access Petrov's millions. The money he pilfered from you, it's merely the inception. My mind raced back through every moment with Harrison. The late-night calls, the enigmatic business trips, the way he'd insisted on managing all our finances. Had any of it been genuine? If what you're asserting is accurate, I managed, why are you confiding in me? Why not proceed to the agency? Blake's expression darkened. Because Petrov's men are pursuing both Harrison and me now. He discovered something about both of us, something that could obliterate everything. I require your assistance, Sienna. You're the only one who might be capable of reaching Harrison before it's too late. Too late for what? Elena's deceased. Blake's words fell like stones in the tranquil room. She was discovered yesterday in her Paris apartment, and Petrov believes Harrison murdered her. The ceiling fan continued its incessant squeak as I processed this information. Elena, the woman from the photographs, the woman Harrison purportedly loved, was dead. And now I was entangled in something I barely comprehended. What do you desire from me? I inquired, surprised by how composed my voice sounded. Assist me in locating him, Blake said. He trusts you. He'll contact you. When he does, I need you to... A sudden commotion from the front of the cafe interrupted him, shouts in French, followed by the sound of shattering glass. Antoine moved with surprising swiftness, pulling me toward a concealed door behind a shelf. Choose now, Sienna, Blake called after me. Assist me in stopping him, or become his subsequent victim. But know this, nothing about your relationship was genuine. You were merely a component of his cover story. As Antoine guided me through a narrow passage that smelled of dampness and aged spices, I clutched the burner phone he'd provided earlier. Harrison had deceived me about his identity. That much was evident. But Blake's narrative had inconsistencies, elements that didn't quite align. I recalled Harrison's final message. Trust no one until I can reach you again. The sound of footsteps echoed behind us as we emerged into a dim alley. Antoine pushed me toward a waiting motorbike. Go, he said urgently. My friend will transport you to a secure location. But first, do you trust Harrison? I looked back at the cafe, contemplating the photographs, the messages, everything I'd just learned. I don't know, I admitted, but I trust that there's more to this narrative and I need to hear it from him. The motorbike roared to life, just as shouts erupted from the cafe's back entrance. As we sped away into the gathering darkness, I realized I'd made my decision. I would locate Harrison, not to aid Blake, but to unearth the truth, whatever it might be. My phone vibrated one final time, a message from an unknown number. Elena isn't dead, but she will be if I don't reach her first. Still trust me. The motorbike navigated the darkening streets of Grand Bay, the warm air laden with the fragrance of sea salt and frangipani. My driver, a young woman who'd only identified herself as Marie, seemed to know precisely where she was going, navigating turns and back alleys with practiced precision. We finally halted at a small guest house tucked away in a residential area, its pink walls barely discernible in the growing darkness. Room 12, Marie said, handing me a key. There's a laptop inside. Check your email. Sure enough, awaiting in my inbox was a message from an address I didn't recognize, sent just minutes prior. Sienna, I know you've spoken to Blake by now. I know about the photographs, the messages, everything he presented to you. Some of it's genuine, most of it isn't. Elena is Viktor Petrov's daughter, yes, and yes, I became close to her, but not for the reasons Blake conveyed. Elena has been assisting us in accumulating evidence against her father for the past year. Those messages you observed, part of our cover. The photographs, staged for Petrov's surveillance. But something went awry. Elena discovered something in her father's files, something grander than anything we'd anticipated. Then she vanished. Blake informed you she's deceased because that's what Petrov desires everyone to believe. The truth is, she's in hiding, and the sole individual who knows her whereabouts is the one person I trusted more than anyone in the world, you. Check your wedding dress, Dee. My hands trembled as I reread the email. The wedding dress I'd packed so meticulously, intending to wear it for our sunset photo shoot. The dress that remained in my luggage back at the resort. My phone vibrated, a message from Annabelle. The men at the resort are gone. It's safe to return. Whatever's in that dress, Sienna, it's what everyone's seeking. I reflected on the weeks preceding the wedding. Harrison had insisted on taking my dress for final alterations just 3 days before the ceremony. Had Elena concealed something in it then? I can return you, Marie said quietly from the doorway. But first, you should observe this. She handed me a tablet. On it was a video dated 2 days prior, security footage from what appeared to be a hotel lobby. Elena walked through the frame, very much alive, carrying a small red bag. Behind her, partially obscured by a newspaper, was Blake. He deceived you about not knowing her whereabouts, Marie said. The question is, why? My mind raced. If Blake had lied about Elena's death, what else had he lied about? I retrieved the burner phone Antoine had given me and dialed the sole number saved within it. Harrison answered on the first ring. Sienna. His voice was strained, exhausted. I'm so sorry for everything, but I need you to listen attentively. Elena possessed evidence of something colossal. Money laundering, human trafficking, political assassinations, all connected to her father, but also connected to individuals far more powerful, individuals within our own agency. Blake? I inquired, though I already knew the answer. He was my mentor, Sienna, the man who recruited me. Discovering he was corrupt, it nearly shattered me. When Elena discovered his involvement, we knew we had to act swiftly, but we required someone above suspicion to aid us, someone new, someone they wouldn't be monitoring. Me, I whispered. Our entire relationship. Was it all merely part of the scheme? There was an extended pause. When Harrison spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. The scheme was to encounter you, utilize your impeccable background to help establish my cover. What wasn't part of the scheme was falling in love with you, genuinely falling in love. That's why you couldn't proceed with it, I said, surprising myself with how composed I felt. Couldn't jeopardize your life by involving you further. But you already had, I said, by marrying me, by making me a part of this. I know, and when I realized that, I attempted to safeguard you the sole way I could conceive, by fleeing, making it appear like a straightforward case of fraud. If Blake believed you were merely another victim, he wouldn't perceive me as a threat. I completed, but something changed. Didn't it? That's why he come to find me. Elena contacted him, Harrison said, grimly. Tried to make a bargain, but Blake, he doesn't make bargains. He eliminates issues. When he couldn't find her, he might have figured that I could know something, I said. But Harrison, I don't have any clue. Yes, you do. Sienna, you only don't know you know it. Think. The week prior the wedding, when I was acting weird, when I had to take calls in private. What did you observe? What did you hear? I closed my eyes, thinking back. Harrison had been distracted. Yes, there had been quiet conversations and then... Elena visited the house, I said, gradually. When you were in the shower, she told me that she was dropping off marriage license, but she walked to my closet, to my dress. What more, Sienna? Think very carefully. She was weeping, I remembered suddenly. Not weeping of grief, weeping of fright. She hugged me before she departed, and whispered something. I believe she told me. Take care of him. But that wasn't it, was it? What did she truly say? Sienna? The recollection struck me like a lightning bolt. Take, care, 3 words, not a phrase. She was letting me know about Lake Geneva's safe. There's a code sewn into it, isn't it? Not a code, Harrison said, quietly. The key, carved on a tiny piece of tech, inserted into the border. Elena split the proof into 3 sections. The hard copy documents are in the safe. The access codes are inside your dress, and the safe's position is with Elena. I finished. That's why Blake couldn't just murder her. He requires all 3 pieces. Suddenly, Marie barged into the room. We need to leave, right away. Somebody just snitched your position to Petrov's people. As I clutched my bag, Harrison's voice became immediate. Sienna, listen to me. I am unable to shield you anymore, but I know you. You're more powerful than anyone knows. Smarter. The night I encountered you. You answered that hard puzzle at the charity gala. The one even Blake couldn't understand. That's when I figured. Figured what? That if anyone could resolve this whole mess, it would be you. The matter is, are you prepared to attempt? Through the window, I could see headlights arriving. Marie was already beginning the motorcycle. I had seconds to select. Tell me how to proceed, I said. Locate Elena, Harrison retorted. But Sienna, don't rely on anything more I tell you from this point. Depend solely upon your own judgment. The line went dead as the initial black SUV halted outside the guest house. As Marie and I left out the back, I realized that my honeymoon hadn't merely been destroyed. It had been transformed into something completely else, a goal I never desired, but one I currently needed to achieve. Not for Harrison, not for Elena, but for my benefit, and for the reality I have a right to know. The resort security cameras had been deactivated. Marie's doing, she assured me as we slipped back onto the property through a service entrance. My heart pounded as we approached my room, but the hallway was mercifully empty. The lock clicked open, and I stepped inside. My luggage was exactly where I'd left it, but something felt off. The room had been searched, professionally, methodically. Everything was in place, but slightly wrong, like a photo taken from a slightly different angle. They were searching for the dress, Marie whispered, standing guard at the door. I unzipped the garment bag with trembling fingers. The wedding dress, ivory silk and delicate lace, looked innocent enough, but as I ran my hands along the hem, I felt it, a barely perceptible thickness in one small section. We need to retrieve it, I said, reaching for the scissors from my toiletry kit. No time, Marie responded urgently. Someone's approaching. We need to relocate. I shoved the dress back in its bag and followed her out, my mind racing. The hem, the microchip, Elena's terrified face that day in my closet. It all meant something, but what? We made it to the hotel's beach entrance just as I heard familiar voices in the lobby. Blake speaking to the hotel staff. My phone buzzed, another message from Harrison. The charity gala where we met. It wasn't a coincidence. You were selected. Your background in cryptography, your work with that tech startup before it collapsed. Blake believed you were ideal, just another failed entrepreneur who'd make a convincing victim. But I perceived something else in you that night, the way you solved that riddle. You observed patterns nobody else could discern. I remembered that night clearly now. The riddle had been part of a fundraising game, something about sequences and codes. I'd solved it almost immediately, while the other guests had struggled for hours. Marie, I said suddenly, I require paper and a pen immediately. She handed me a small notebook from her pocket. My hand shook as I wrote out what I remembered of Elena's behavior that day in my closet. Asterisk 3 words asterisk, asterisk take care asterisk. But it wasn't just the words, it was asterisk how asterisk she'd said them, the pauses, the emphasis. It's not directions to a safe, I muttered, scribbling frantically. It's a cipher key, the pattern in the hem. It's not just a code, it's part of a sequence. Marie looked perplexed, but I was already pulling out my phone, Googling the charity gala from a year ago. The riddle had been about pattern recognition in seemingly random sequences. And now, looking at my wedding dress, I realized the decorative pattern in the lace wasn't just decorative. Elena didn't conceal a microchip in my dress, I said, the realization hitting me like a surge. She concealed the asterisk pattern asterisk in the lace itself. The entire dress asterisk is asterisk the code. My phone vibrated again. Annabelle this time. Sienna, whatever you've deciphered, maintain it confidential. Harrison's been compromised. They possess him. Almost simultaneously, another message appeared. This one from Harrison's number. Meet me at the marina, slip 23, arrive alone. It's a trap, Marie said quietly. Of course it is, I replied, still studying the dress. But perhaps that's precisely where we need to be. I thought about everything I knew. Elena's message, the pattern in the lace, the charity gala riddle, Harrison's insistence that I trust only myself. Pieces of a puzzle that had seemed random, but now... Marie, does that laptop in the guest house possess a camera? She nodded. Excellent, because I need to photograph every centimeter of this dress. And then I need you to assist me in setting a trap of our own. For whom? She inquired. Blake, Petrov's men. I thought about Harrison's final message, about not trusting anything else he told me, about trusting only myself. And suddenly, I knew. For everyone, I said, because there's something nobody's considered. Not Blake, not Petrov, not even Harrison. What's that? I looked at the dress, at the intricate pattern that held secrets within secrets that maybe,